ladies and gents, lesson 41. Yeah, that's true. Ibi takes notes. Lesson 41. Today, I'm going to talk about sugiru and how it works. Sugiru, a very neat little word. Let me introduce you, chat, to yours truly, Sugiru. Well, that's not really, you don't really say yours truly for things that aren't yourself. But nonetheless, we're not here to learn English. We're here to learn Japanese, which is lucky for me because at this point, it's probably better to ask me about English questions than Japanese ones. So, what is sugiru? How do you say something is too much? That's all things that we're going to learn today. And as I mentioned earlier, today for once, I've come prepared. So it's going to be interesting, right? We'll see how this goes. Here you go, sugiru. Things are just going to appear on screen. It's going to be magical. Sugiru, first thing that I want to talk about is just the word itself. Sugiru is basically just it's just a godan verb. Sugiru is just a godan verb. It follows, sorry, it's an ichidan verb. So much for being prepared. That's wrong. Ichidan. It's just an ichidan verb. Sugiru itself can be used as most of the time it's used as an intransitive verb, but sometimes it's also used transitively. And I have brought examples for that. The meaning of sugiru is really the important part. It means to pass through, okay? Like to pass through something. It means for time to pass, okay? Or it means to exceed. The main meaning we're going to concern ourselves with today is actually this one, the exceeding meaning. Because we're going to actually look at mostly sugiru as an auxiliary verb. So that's what we're actually going to look at. The other meanings, to pass through and to pass time and stuff like that, for those I'll quickly go over two examples. So first of all, we have toki ga sugita, which is pretty simply like something like the time has passed. Okay, the time has passed. Toki ga sugita. You can see here, this is basically more like an intransitive usage because we don't really have a direct object here, not even an implied one. Just toki ga, the time has passed. So this is simply our subject and then ga sugita. This is pretty straightforward. The next example I'm going to show you is kuruma ga yoko o sugimasu. This is more interesting because here we actually have a sort of more transitive-ish kind of usage. So you can see here with yoko, this is more like, it's in a similar vein. Hey, Kimomu. Difference from tatsu. Tatsu means for time to pass for, tatsu means for time to elapse. Like time elapses, and sugiru is more for like it going over a certain mark. Does that make sense? That's, in general, sugiru kind of means like, it's like when you have a line, right? You have like a line as something progresses. At some point X, it will go over. And that's where we use sugiru, sort of this over. Whereas tatsu refers more to the span until like this time has passed. Does that make sense? That's kind of sugiru versus tatsu, I would say. So with our example here, kuruma ga yoko o sugimasu. This is kind of like the car or a car. Example with tatsu. You could just say like sunen ga tatta. A few years have passed. Like a few years have elapsed. The car passed next to me. Or, well, I should say will pass. So this is more like a future tense. So the car will pass next to me. The car will pass next to me. That's this yoko. Yoko is basically just anything right beside something else. So generally, a yoko will always kind of be this position next to you or next to something else. So when you say kuruma ga yoko o sugimasu, kind of means like a car will pass next to me like this. That's more or less how you use sugiru. If you want more information, the car passes next to me seems okay too. Yeah, the car passes next to me. That works too. You can either make a future tense out of it, or you can make like a more tendency-focused sentence with it. As any time when you use the non-past tense. So when non-past is used, you can use it as like a tendency or a thing that always happens or tends to happen, or you can use it as a future tense. Like, that's just kind of the nuance of non-past. All the same things apply here. So 車が横を過ぎます, which means like cars. You could also say this means cars pass next to me, right? You could make it as like a sort of like general statement as well. There's also past time 過ごす. Yeah, 過ごす is basically the exclusive transitive version of 過ぎる, but I don't want to talk too much about 過ごす because 過ごす is not gonna play a role once we get to the auxiliary usage of it. So we're mostly gonna focus on 過ぎる and 過ぎる as a transitive. Sorry, 過ぎる as an auxiliary. So 車が横を過ぎます. A car passes next to me, cars pass next to me, or the car will pass next to me, all of these things. So let's actually look at how 過ぎる is used. Wait, you do actual grammar lessons? Yeah, I do. I love saying I do because it sounds like do. I'm sorry. Is that too distracting? Let's actually look at the... Oh, did I... Oh, interesting. So this one is also that? Yes. Okay, good. So I can actually just go here. Sorry. This one's not here. It's not supposed to be. Oh, actually, no, I'm wrong. I didn't read it properly. Okay, let's actually look at the usage as an auxiliary. Thank you for following Yorki desu. Jesus. Yeah, you can tell I'm not used to being prepared. Being prepared is like a whole new... That's like a whole new space of existence for me. Let's actually look at the auxiliary usage of 過ぎる. Now, for those of you who have worked with any sort of auxiliary verb before, this will not be anything new. For verbs, 過ぎる attaches to the must stem. Okay, so it is similar to something like ている or てくる, basically. For e-adjectives, the adjective stem. E-adjective stems are very simple. You take the adjective and you remove e. Okay, and non-adjectives, you simply take the adjective as it is and you add the auxiliary 過ぎる. Now worry not, because I have prepared an example for each. So let's see, we have this here. For verbs, we would have something like this, where, how could I worry? I don't know. For verbs, we have something like this, 飲みすぎる. Okay, which means like to drink too much. Okay, so drink too much. Drink too much. 飲みすぎる. Too much preparation. My head is spinning. I know, right? We're not used to this. 飲みすぎる. To drink too much. You can see I marked the verb stem here in red. So this is simply the must stem of 飲む. If you don't know about stems, then you're gonna have to look that up. 飲みすぎた. Yeah, so because, like I said, 過ぎる is simply an ichidan verb. It conjugates like a normal verb. It conjugates just like any other... there are lots of... This is too big for me. There are lots of the earlier lessons. Yeah, you can find them right here. So, and I especially recommend the ones about... The first few are especially good, I think, with the general sentence structure and verbs. Verbs is very important. 過ぎる conjugates like any ichidan verb. So you can do 過ぎた, 過ぎます. All of these work just fine. So you just have to remember your conjugations. So 飲みすぎる for verbs. The next would be e-adjectives. For e-adjectives, here I chose 重い. I also kind of made a tiny little mistake here. So let me just fix that. It is not really a big deal, but this す here is supposed to be white. So let's fix that real quick. Plop. There we go. Now it's correct. 重い means heavy. Okay. So you'll just have 重すぎる. Okay. And the same here is true again if you want to make past tenses, etc. Generally, 重い is just heavy. It's an e adjective. So when you see this, you'll have like 重い. Just heavy, right? So 重すぎる simply means too heavy. Too heavy. So you could say something like 重すぎて動かせない. Something like that. It's too heavy, I cannot move it. Because it's too heavy, I cannot move it. Don't worry, we'll look at a lot of examples. The next one is with non-adjectives. So you've hopefully kind of just realized the pattern at this point. it is no big deal either. 簡単すぎる. Here I forgot the su. So preparation is good, but one also needs to make sure that you actually put in all the letters. That would be preferable. And that's an easy fix. Su. I do need you to be white though. Plus you're white. Huh. Bam. There we go. 重すぎて動かせない has got to be a Zelda line. Maybe, you know, maybe. It's very video game-ish, right? It's like, oh, you try to move this object, but it's too heavy and you cannot move it. That's kind of how it sounds. 簡単すぎる. So this just means too easy. Too easy. Does help a lot that you don't have to write out the sentence in real time. Yeah, which also I think was why this lesson is going to be more a bit more quick than usual. But I do think I will manage to put actually more information in a shorter amount of time. All right, so I hope this is kind of clear. And to note, these are basically the only 3 cases that you're going to have to deal with. Because sugiru does not attach to anything else. Sugiru only attaches to verbs. It attaches to e-adjectives and adjectives. And that's it. You can't attach it to nouns generally. The only times when you will see sugiru attached to nouns is more when nouns are being treated as non-adjectives. Okay? Remember, or maybe this is news to you, I don't know, but non-adjectives and nouns have a very close relationship. They can be pretty similar. So when you see sugiru attached to something that you think, wait, isn't this a noun? It's probably more like meant as an adjective in that case. So yeah, there you go. 簡単すぎる. Too easy. Too easy, man. Too easy. All right, let's get rid of these. And the heavy as well. Now, I'll just show you examples of this, basically. So, let us clean up. There we go. Now I have a lot of space. That's good. Let's actually look at usage. So, first I'll show you simple usage. And like usual, we pretty much only use the kanji instead of the kana when using non-auxiliary. Yeah, exactly, that's true. I will show you this in the example. So let's look at an example for simple usage. So generally, just like Ibi said, what you will see is sugiru in kana only. So for auxiliary usage, generally the rule is like sugiru in kana only, right? That's not... I shouldn't say rule, it's more like a tendency, okay? But that is something you can remember. What is that? 過大過剰, 過大過剰, too big, too heavy, or something like that. Tanaka-san. Ebihiko. Too thick, just too thick. As a general thing, when auxiliaries, I'll put it up here. Auxiliary usually in kana. Again, usually. You can have it otherwise, but the tendency is for it to be in kana. So what do we have here? この問題, this problem は難しすぎる. This problem is what? It's too difficult. 難しい. 難しい is an e-adjective. So we have e-adjective here. Like I said earlier, e-adjective, you take away the e at the end, and you end up with a stem, and then you can just attach sugiru. So here our translation will be, this problem is too hard, too difficult. It's too difficult. I'll shorten difficult. This problem is too difficult. Now, I know that handwriting is subjective, but this is just bad. It's a bit more legible. This problem is too difficult. 助動詞として、漢字で書かれるの見たことある. Yeah, it does happen. Like I said, it's a tendency, but it's not a rule. It's not a fixed rule. You can see it a lot, depending on where you go look. この問題は難しすぎる. So this problem, this question, this problem, on a test, 問題 would be like a question. 難しすぎる. It's too difficult. It's simply too difficult. Okay. Now, if you're just making statements about like how things are, sort of, especially with adjectives, Generally, the non-past tense in sugiru will just describe it generally. Okay, so to elaborate on that, with muzukashi sugiru, it just means too difficult. It's the tense information is basically just like the one with like general statement. Okay, it's not like it's usually not like a future tense, like it will be too difficult, though theoretically it could be. But I would say on average, the nuance for just using non-past sugiru like this, it would just be to make a statement about how it is in general, right? So, この問題は難しすぎる. This problem is too difficult. Alright, let's look at another one. Here we have 彼はやりすぎたよ. Okay, 彼はやりすぎたよ. What have we here? We have yari, which is a verb, 語段 with R. I'll start using these maybe. So these are shorthands that you can use. Verb, V for verb, 5 for 語段, and R for being in the ragyo, basically. So that's just my shorthand for now. Dictionaries use the same thing. Yeah, he did too much or he crossed the line. Yaru here means basically to do something. It's very similar to suru, but it has a bit more of like an emphasized connotation. So we can translate as he did too much.
How are you doing?
Hey, thank you so much, Axe. Welcome back.
Fine. And you?
17 months.
Well, I'm doing fine too. Perfect.
ゲイモグアにイエイかっこいいすぎる。
かっこいいすぎる is wrong. Remember that the stem of e is actually, or when you conjugate e, you actually treat it as yoi. Remember that. So yosugi. Yosugiru. But thank you so much. かっこよすぎ. かっこよすぎる. I appreciate it though. He did too much, or we can also translate as he went too far. He went too far. かっこよすぎる. Yes. Thank you. Here, 彼はやりすぎた. Notice the past tense. So here we have past. So the whole sentence is a finished action. It's finished. He did go too far. He did do too much, or he went too far. Okay, this is something that already happened. It's done. かっこよすぎた. Well, he was too cool. And the last example that I have for the simple usage would be here. 自分の家の前を通り過ぎてしまいました. So what is this? The reason I included an example with 通り過ぎる is because 通り過ぎる is a very, very common combination of a verb plus 過ぎる. Generally, 通り過ぎる means to pass by something. It's like 通る to pass, but like the 過ぎる notation meaning like you're going too far, like you went past something, you passed it, you went over the line, right? You went past it, and then that's like you went too far basically in terms of location usually. So 通り過ぎる is going too far, but only in terms of location. It doesn't mean you went too far being mean or anything like that. You can't use 通り過ぎる to mean like going too far as in like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. It's more physically as a location, you've gone literally too far past something. That's what it means. 自分の家の前を通り過ぎてしまいました. So basically this would translate to I will use walked, though it doesn't have to be walk. It can be another movement action, but we can do walk. I walked past the front of my house, or something like that. I walked past in front of my house, or something like that. I walked past the front of my house. Another reason that I use this sentence here is that we have a more conjugated version of sugiru. So if you look at how sugiru is used here, we actually have sugite and then shimaimashita. This is to show you that, like most auxiliaries, sugiru can be conjugated to your will. It will basically do anything that you are already used to in terms of verbs, right? So teshimau is valid. You can use teshimau to imply sort of an action that went too much, or that finished completely, or that you did accidentally. Like you had no control over it, basically. 通り過ぎてしまいました. I ended up going past my house, is basically what this means. This teshimao often you translate as end up doing something. Okay? So there you go. That's simple usage. I will now show you more about negative usage. But before we get there, does anyone have any questions about these 3 sentences? Or a question indirectly related to these 3 sentences? I'll use this time to take a sip of my drink. Yeah. There we go. Oh, another thing that I will quickly bring up, for which I will make some space. I will delete this, just remember, auxiliary is usually in kana. One thing to bring up is that sometimes you might have something sugi instead of sugiru. What that is kind of like we can call it slangy usage, I guess. It's a little bit slangy, like, for example, and Smoke basically posted in chat, kakko yosugi. That is basically grammatically the way this works is that, we've talked about this in the past a little bit, but grammatically speaking, the stem, let me do it like this. The must stem of a verb can kind of function as like a noun. Okay, it kind of function as like a noun, and that's kind of how this works, but it's more grammatically speaking. In terms of actual usage, what you will see is that kakko yosugi and kakko yosugiru actually mean the same thing. It's just people tend to often also just say sugi to mean like too much, or kakko yosugi is basically an emphatic expression. Emphatic means with emphasis, or used for emphasis. So it's a way to emphasize that something is really, 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 really that. So kakko yosugi, it's really, really cool. Right, it's very cool. So you're saying it's too cool, but you don't mean too as a negative. You mean it as a positive. It's just too cool to bear, right? It's so cool. Kakko yosugi could theoretically also be interpreted as literally too cool. Like you're so cool that it's not good anymore. You've gone too far. It's no good. Too much. But usually that's not how it's used. But yeah, that's sort of the casual usage of sugiru for especially adjectives. I would say especially adjectives get used. Kakko yosugiru or yosugi or oishisugi. Oishisugi. It's too delicious. It's so delicious I can't handle it. That kind of nuance. In Hebrew we have a term called verb, a verb name, which is the verb but as a noun describing drinking, playing. Well, that's just called nominalized verb, or the process of nominalization. In English, ing for nominalization is called the gerund. The gerund. So eating as a verb is called a gerund. I don't know why, that's just what it's called. Alright, let me make way, and now let's talk about how sugiru is used in the negative conjugation, because that's also pretty interesting. I thought might be that, but I never really thought about it. Yeah, turning anything into a noun is called nominalizing it. So, boop, boop, boop. Let's look at negative usage. First, I'll have to get rid of this. Okay, so negative usage. Negative usage is also pretty interesting. And for that, I have done this. There's generally two patterns that you'll see. I would say, arguably, pattern number 1 here, let's call this pattern number 1, and let's call this pattern number 2. I would say that pattern number 1 is probably the more, I would say that pattern number 2 is probably the one you're going to see more frequently, but that doesn't mean that pattern number 1 doesn't exist. So, what this here is, this nasugi, this is like the negative stem, okay? So this is from nai. Okay, so, here, I'll draw a little thing. This is from nai. So that's a negative conjugation. It's any negative conjugation. And if you are more solid in your grammar, or if you've been listening to me a lot, I must have brought this up at some point. In many cases, the suffix nai can be treated like an e-adjective, grammatically speaking. So for the purpose of conjugation, nai works a lot like an e-adjective. So what did we say about e-adjectives? Well, with the stem, we can add sugiru. So that's exactly what we do. Sorry, I don't speak Korean. So we're allowed to use sugiru like this because it behaves like an e-adjective, okay? And that's exactly what we're doing here. So let me illustrate to you the difference between these two. We have two conjugations for yomu. Yomu is to read. So yomu, to read, okay? And then here we have yominasugiru and yomisuginai. So what is the difference? Are these the same? Right? Are these the same? I'll give you a second to think about it. All right. I hope you've had your second. If you're watching the video, you can also pause. The answer is they're not the same. These don't mean the same thing. Okay. Basically, the way this works is when you have the negative verb. So here we have a, this is negative, right? Negative verb. I'm sorry, Josenjin, I just really don't speak Korean. If someone can put that into Google Translate and see if it's at least not like anything offensive, that'd be great. But I'm not assuming it is. I'm hoping not. Here we have a negative verb, and here we have a positive verb stem. So what do we end up with? Yominasugiru basically means, it basically translates to read too little, okay? Read too little. Wait, I can't type. Little. Read too little, because the action we have is not reading. So if we're doing the not reading too much, then that means we're reading too little, right? We're doing too much of not reading, if that makes sense. Here, our action is yomi, it's positive, it's reading, so this just means not read too much. I'm curious, I want to study Japanese too, I don't know English, this may not be my classroom. That's true, it may not. I'm sorry, I just don't speak Korean. Maybe one day. Come back in a few years, I'll try and learn Korean. Yomi suginai, here more straightforward. So we're doing too much reading, but the opposite of that. So not too much, okay? Not too much. Well, I should do it more cleanly. It would be not to read too much, right? That's what that means. So that's the difference. Yomi suginai, not to read too much. So we have yomi sugiru, which means to read too much, and then we say not that. So we take the negative of it. So not to read too much. Okay? This may seem a little bit confusing. I hope it's pretty clear. I wanted to introduce sort of this difference here because it's pretty important. Nomi sugiru na would be don't drink too much. Yeah, exactly. Sugiru na. So there you just add like the na negative imperative suffix and you're basically done. Sugiru na. Don't do that. Okay, so that's the difference between nasugiru versus suginai. Now, note that you are, of course, allowed to keep conjugating both of these, okay? For example, sugi naku wa nai would be a thing that you might hear. So, sugi naku wa nai, which means, like, it's not like he's not reading too much. Or so it gets more complicated, but you are, of course, allowed to keep conjugating. But the basic meanings of these two are read too little or not read too much, or in this yomi example specifically. Yeah, but that's always true with conjugation. You can always kind of keep conjugating a bit and like see where that takes you. Nasasugiru. Yomi nasasugiru. That, let me think. Either I got it wrong or I need to, wait, what did they put here? Are you sure that's right? I don't think that's right, right? Yomi nasasuginai. Isn't, wait, we talked about I looked up the nasasugi. For hiteke nara, nasugi nan janai desu ka ne? Actually, for hiteke, it would be nasa. Did they just get this? Wait, let me think. This may be a thing. Nasugiru. I need to go check because I'm not sure. You might be right. Which one is it? Nasugiru, nasasugiru. ものすごい難しい今後問題的なの、学問的な話になってる。そうだね。確か。こういうのちょっとまあ、I've got to get you to this hour earlier schedule again. But it's the same. Did we change time zones or something? Or it's still the same. I haven't changed. They're discussing it. Okay, so I am pretty sure 間違ってはいないと思う。まあ、間違ってないかな I'm not sure anymore. I should have looked this up. Actually, that's a good point that that Ebihiko-san brings up, is that you often have you have na and nasa. So you have like nasasugi, nasugi, and it gets very complicated. Daylight savings just... Yeah, I haven't changed the time slot. It's been the same time slot for a long time. Let's just roll with this. We can look it up later. Because I do know that these, like, whether you should add na or not is like a pretty big discussion thingy. So yeah. We'll look at that later so that we can clear it up. For now, it's not the most important thing. Even if there is a sa, it would still be the same meaning. I mean, you did an hour later for a while last year. Yeah, but that's already been like a few months, right? It's been like 4 months or 5 months since I did that. But I mean, like, time flies, so... What we should do now... さが抜けてるかな。でも意味はわかる。意味はわかる。そうだね。さが抜けてるかな。どうでしょう。後でちょっと調べてみましょう。そういうの。Would you rather know how you're going to die or know the exact time you're going to die? I don't know. I'll think about it later. Time is hard. Time is hard. True. So let's look at, I've got 3 more examples for the negative usage of sugiru. So here we have, コンピューターの画面に近すぎないことが大切だ. We also have 2 phrases here, or 2 clauses. So we have clause number 1, which goes from here to here, and we have clause number 2, which is this part. Sorry, I put the thing in the wrong place. It should be after to, of course, こと. Like this. コンピューターの画面に近すぎないことが大切だ。近すぎる So, wait, did I forget? Maybe. Yeah, そうだね。近すぎる。近すぎない。Not to come too close. Yeah, not to be too close. So, here basically the sentence says, sorry, I keep getting confused with myself, but it's not actually all that confusing. コンピューターの画面 means screen, and 近すぎない means not too close, right? So we have すぎる too much, but negative, so not too much. And then simply nominalized to が大切だ. So it is important. So が大切, it is important. So basically, translating to, it is important not to come too close to the computer screen. Okay? It's important not to come too close to the computer screen, or not to sit too close in front of it. Oh, man with no beard. Thank you for following. I have a beard, but not a big one. Just a bit of a beard. Thank you. Follow. ありがとうございます。So that's one example with negative usage. This one, because I run out of space, because I will keep running out of space, I will have to delete the translation, because these are longer sentences. So just, it is important not to come too close to the screen. So let's make space for whatever is to come. And what is to come is number 2. 食べすぎないでくださいね. Okay, so here we have a example of with te or de kudasai. So please do something. In our case, it's negative, so please do not eat too much. 食べすぎる, meaning to eat too much. As a negative, it would be don't eat too much or not eat too much. And then as a request, so please do not. Here I actually have space, so I'll put it here. Please don't eat too much. Please don't eat too much. ないでください, right? So again, just illustrating, you can have all the standard conjugations basically. 過ぎないでください. Also, here as an illustration, I also put 過ぎる in kanji, which again, as a tendency, you'll probably see it more often in kana than kanji. But it can happen. And I put it here just to sort of be like, yeah, by the way, it can show up in kanji as well. And it will look like this. Close to VR screen, you will find out about pretty close. こんばんは、イエ先生。今日の気分はどうですか？今日は、とても元気です。と言ったら、ちょっと嘘になるかもね。今日はね、なんかこう、余計に眠い。ちょっとね、こう、別に元気とか、そういうのは大丈夫だけどね、そっちの、体の状態は全部平気だけど、ちょっと眠い。今日はちょっと眠い。多分、寝不足とかそういう理由で。But other than that, I'm fine. しなすぎない。私もいつも眠いです。いや、そうですね。大変ですよ。It's the worst. ちょっと勉強しなすぎない。Again, we would have the discussion about either しなすぎ or しなさすぎ。なさすぎ、なすぎ。I will look that up. After the lesson, we're gonna go on an adventure and we're gonna find out what the background is between having the sign or not having it. Because I didn't consider that. I didn't think about that. But we'll see what lies beyond and if there is one thing that's considered correct and one that is considered wrong. Because I've seen both now, so yeah. But for now, it doesn't matter. Let's just look at it for what it is. ちょっと勉強しなすぎない? Okay? 勉強しなすぎない? This one is a little bit more layered, I guess, this sentence. I used a negative question. So it's kind of like saying, like, not question mark, right? It's a negative question. So I'll show you. Translation would just be, aren't you studying too little, right? Aren't you studying too little? Basically. ちょっと勉強すぎてるんじゃない? Have you would have the same meaning? No, double negative. So, first of all, it should be 勉強しすぎ? かな. そうだね。でもちょっとさっきチェックしたサイトにしなすぎって書いてあったけど、まあサイトが間違っている可能性も十分にあるから、ちょっと後で調べてみる。しすぎ。So, the meaning of ちょっと勉強しすぎてるんじゃない would mean, aren't you studying a little bit too much? しない。しなさい。しなさい、しない Well, しなさい and しない are different things. We're not talking about しなさい. I guess things just keep getting more confusing, but we will look it up. When you would say ちょっと勉強しすぎてるんじゃない that would mean like you are studying too much. Aren't you studying too much? A bit too much. Whereas this one is, aren't you studying too little? So this one here says like you should be more, right? Like you're implying should do more. You're saying like should do more. ちょっと勉強しすぎない? Aren't 勉強しなすぎない? Aren't you not studying enough? Right? That's kind of how that is. That makes sense. All right. And that's the third example for negative usage that I have. And that's basically that. Again, I keep reiterating this, but after the lesson, we're going to go on a journey because I have seen resources where you had, nasugi, right? And people have been pointing out, shouldn't it be nasasugi? And I think like people have a point. But also, I don't know. So we'll have to go read about it. So that's what we'll actually do. Jan Torval. Hello. Torvali, sorry, I read your name wrong. Please don't kill me. Nasasugiru. Too little, too few when you don't have something. Yaruki. I understand that, yes. I understand what it means. The question is if Nasugi is correct or Nasasugi is correct. The question is only one correct because I saw a resource where they had Nasugi, so yeah. It looks like I missed a lot, but I'll rewatch it on YouTube. Yeah, you can do that. That's basically it. Before we go on our grammatical journey, do you have any questions about what I did? Benkyou suginai. Yes, never study too much. Yes. All right. When you don't have something, there isn't something in extreme level. Yaruki ga nasasugiru. Yeah, again, the meaning is clear. What it means is clear. The question is just if the sa is required or not. I've actually seen a whole article written in Japanese about that topic, so we'll dive in. We'll see. We'll see which one is the real deal. The thing is, something like nasa as like an added, the sa for negative stuff added is, for example, you have like, so like you have soul, right? So nasa soul instead of naso. But then you also have something like, I think, for example, one would be tsumaranai. It would be tsumaranaso and not tsumaranasaso. Because tsumaranai is treated as an e adjective. It's complicated. Either way. Yeah. And that's what we're gonna have to look at, is how the nai stem is treated here. But since it is just a negative stem, or not a stem, the negative suffix here, since it is a negative suffix, I could believe that the sa should be in there. But then I have to, yeah. Then it seems that imabi is actually wrong. But that'd be interesting. We can see if we need to correct imabi. Suginai. It seems a relatively simple concept to pick up on generally. Yeah, but Beth, do note that it should be benkyou shisuginai. You have to add the suru, shi being the stem of suru. Benkyou sugiru doesn't quite work because benkyou is mostly a suru verb or a thing. It seems now is currently used, but not that much. Yeah, that would make sense to me. That would make sense. We'll look it up. Minus technicalities, I mean. Good. All right, that was that. That was basically what I wanted to talk about. I hope you liked the more prepared style. I love how, ironically, even though I prepared for like an hour, we still ended up having like this uncleared question about the inserted sa. But that's why we have the after lesson time to explore these kinds of things. But I think Akari probably has already found what it will boil down to. It will probably boil down to more like a modern versus a traditionally correct usage or whatever, something like that is what I expect we will find. But we can go on that journey together. So thank you very much for attending this week's lesson. This is probably how we're going to do things moving forward. I hope that it'll be a bit more concise and yeah, stuff like that. Thank you. Stick around if you would like to, because I'm gonna keep streaming, obviously. I have only been live for an hour, but the lesson is now concluded. If you still have questions, or even if they're completely unrelated to the lesson, that's fine. All right. Thank you.